It had been 3 years since my family had last gone on a vacation to Florida, something we did annually before the recession hit. But since now we had enough money, my parents decided, under the popular demand of me and my sister, that we go to Walt Disney World again. We were both teenagers, and our parents kinda saw this as a bit juvenile, but decided it would be fun anyway. I could not wait to finally go back, and neither could my sister. Being avid theme park goers as well, we were especially attracted to the creativity and the, well, magic, as one would say, about the rides there. They never got old, and I had their share of nostalgia and excitement. However, there was one other reason I wanted to go. You normally associate Disney World with words as such as excitement, fun, and happiness. But with these characterizations comes counterbalances. After scrolling through the OMG facts one night, I came across a rather interesting fact. It would be an abandoned water park in Walt Disney World, apparently named River Country. I was absolutely appalled by this, since I had previously thought of Disney as more idealistic and perfect way. The water park was directly on the shore of Bay Lake, being that huge standing body of water, an adjunct of the Magic Kingdom. River Country was, and still is, on the same side of the theme park just mentioned, but right next to the resort called Walt Disney Fort Wilderness Resort. Surrounding the water park as the resort side is a large green wall with signs dotted it. The place opened in 1976 and used water from the Bay Lake in most of the park's attractions. It was very rustic and wilderness-based in design, and contains artificial rocks that resemble those used of other attractions. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. There's a dam present to keep chunks of dirt and mud from getting into the water too, so guests don't have to worry about swimming in an artificial bog created by the water from the lake. It was open for 25 years, closing its doors in 2001. And in 2005, a statement released by Disney said that the park would be closed for good. So for 11 years, River Country has been sitting there abandoned. Nature is in an advanced stage of reclaiming the area, but the slides remain, and so does the artificial rocks, and the small pond, now a swamp, that was used for swimming. Many urban explorers have infiltrated the area, jumping over the walls to get footage over the abandoned water park. One of the most controversial things about the park nowadays is why it closed, which is what I was destined to find out. I wanted some real footage of the area before it closed as well, since from what I heard, it was very joyous and bustling with tourists compared to its ghost town status today. I was without internet at the time, so about 2 days before we were planning to leave, I went to the local library, which archived many old videos that people in my community had dug up in their attics and donated to the library to be part of a small historical society. Hoping that I might find some good footage, I asked the librarian if they happened to carry any videos concerning family vacations. She nodded and brought me a small section containing many old VCR tapes and a few DVDs here and there. After about half an hour of searching, I finally came across a cassette with the words, "The Old-Fashioned Swimming Hole," inscribed on the top of it. This was a term used to describe River Country during the glory days, so I took it, almost certain that was the footage I was looking for. I asked the librarian if I could sign it out, but she told me that the historical video has to stay in the library. I could, however, watch the video in the small conference room behind the front desk. The librarian led me into the windowless room, and I took a seat in front of the television. She left the room and closed the door, and the audio would not disturb any other librarian patriots. I popped the cassette into the VCR under the TV and turned the lights off so I could see the video better. I was expecting the quality to be low anyway. About a half a minute or so, the screen was gray and was accompanied by a loud beeping noise, typical for old VCR tapes. The gray soon disappeared, showing footage of two individuals in front of the entrance of River Country. They were both men, and it was either very late at night or very early in the morning, as nobody else was in the park. Very few of the water park's lights were on either. On the bottom left corner of the screen dated November 1st, 2001. This was significant because the water park closed for good the very next day on November 2nd. The two men were talking about how they had been denied entrance to the park in the morning since it had reached its guest capacity limit. They also stated that only these hours of night could they pass in the park's security. The two walked to the bigger water slides in the park, which led directly into the pond, supplied by a green water of Bay Lake. Once they both got to the top of the slide, which was encircled by artificial orange rocks, one man prepared to slide down. The two laughed over what seemed to be an inside joke, and finally, the cameraman ended up pushing his friend down. I heard him scream in delight as he descended the pond. The cameraman then proceeded back to the way they came to the slide across the bridge that traversed to the small lagoon. He ended up back at the pond shore where the sound of the splash was heard. This is when the video started to unsettle me a little. After waiting at the shore of the pond about 3 minutes, nobody surfaced. The cameraman began to cry his friend's name frantically and started to run back to get the help of the Fort Wilderness Resort. He stopped abruptly though at what seems to be at the kiddie area, a small, shallow pond, on hearing a faint cough. He instantly turned around and saw a barely visible shadow about 10 or so feet behind him. Relieved, the cameraman started to approach his friend, glad he was okay. But again, he abruptly halted. The friend's head was hanging down as he slowly inches it up. The cameraman started to hyperventilate as the features of the other man's face began to show. Crimson, dry blood was caked around his mouth, and some were even dripping off his chin. He was missing all the hair on his head as well, but one of the most disturbing parts of the image was that there was a patch of skin missing that revealed parts of the man's skull and jawbone. He was even missing his right eye, leaving an empty socket. I became severely nauseous at the sight of this, to the point where I was swallowing my own vomit. My heart also began to race as fear started to settle in my body. As the last minute of the film approaches, the horrendous figure muttered something that sounded like, "There is no hope under the water." With that, the cameraman ran for his life, wheezing and panicking throughout the ordeal. I wanted to turn the television off and run myself, so I bolted the door leading out of the room. I reached for the knob, but I paused. The television was giving off the sound of an old furnace found in the basement of a home, just in a softer tone. This tone, for some unknown reason, kept me from moving away. I was just staring blankly at the television. The cameraman was still sprinting, but did not seem to be making any progress. He ended back at the large pond where the slide had dumped his friend. He could hear him sobbing softly, fearing for his life. Suddenly the tape began to gradually slow down. As the man frantically looked from side to side, the audio volume along with the furnace sound went up as the video lagged. Hesitantly, the cameraman turned all the way around and shrieked at the sight of his friend. The video paused on his frame, exposing the caked blood all over the man's face. The top of his skull bone was now completely exposed, his right eye still missing, his mouth was wide open, and coming from it was what looks like a combination of the water from Bay Lake and bile. This stayed on the screen for about 10 seconds and switched to a black screen displaying one single message. The epidemic begins today. Instantly the power went out, and I was left alone in the darkness in the conference room. I became so terrified that I could not see a thing, and I could not see the door either. I began to shake in absolute fear. River Country had closed because of this, and it was obvious. Walt Disney World has been keeping a disgusting secret. I rushed to the other side of the room, disoriented, but all I felt was a warm breathing seeping down my neck, and the smell of bile. River Country is an actual abandoned water park that has been sitting dormant in Walt Disney World for over a decade. Oddly, the lights are still on within the area, and the music still plays as well. Many theories have come up with about its closing, but one of the most plausible ones, and one has been confirmed by Walt Disney World employees, is that a deadly type of amoeba was found within the waters of Bay Lake, which was used to supply many parts of the theme park. This amoeba can cause severe illness or death. So, as a precautionary measure, Disney closed the park for good.